We're a chatty bunch this morning. I love it. Good. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. Good morning. It's great to see all of you here this morning at St. Stephen's. I'm John Rohrs, the rector here, and this is the second in a new kind of post-Easter series for this Sunday Forum. All of them focused on sort of finding the resurrection and making the resurrection real in the midst of the challenges of life. It's one thing to talk about the resurrection in sort of flowery terms on Easter morning with all the trumpets and the lilies, but what does it mean in the midst of the real challenges of our life? So we talked last week, we had a wonderful start with Tim Hightower and Bill Sachs telling Tim's story. This morning, we are going to talk about another means, another avenue of seeking new life and resurrection in the midst of challenges related to mental health. Broadly speaking, challenges that affect every one of us and every one of our families one way or another. So it is my joy to welcome our guest speakers. One of them is Stephanie Johnson, who you know, or many of you would know as a parishioner here. And Stephanie is a doctor of psychology and has a therapy practice for young adults and adults here in the area. And then the other is my good friend, Michelle Peterson, who is here with her husband Eric as well in the resource section. And they are here from Norfolk. And Michelle is, along with Eric, the founder and director of the Sarah Michelle Peterson Foundation, which focuses on awareness and education around suicide prevention in Hampton Roads area. So it is wonderful to have you both. Come on up here to the stage. Welcome them. Yeah, you get one of these. Either one. Yeah. And so you all sit there. I'm going to sit over here and facilitate us. Just to give you a sense of how this will go, so we're going to have a facilitated conversation here, and then we have sort of a resource section that has taken over our coffee area there for the morning. So we're going to wrap up in time to give those folks just to give, a 30-second introduction commercial to. These are all representatives of ministries that we house here each week in the life cycle of our parish. Some of them you may know about and some of them you may not, but they're all related to health and wellness ministries that are part of our life here. So with that, I'm gonna sit down. And I want to start off, so this is for both of you, start off naming the fact, there you go, so we can see. Perfect. Naming the fact that coming out of the pandemic, of course, there was a lot of talk and focus society-wide about the challenges of mental health for people of all ages. Now that we have come out of the worst of that time, I think it would be helpful to hear, you both are on the ground in a way that the rest of us are not, hearing people's stories and their challenges. What do you see in these days of sort of the lingering impact that people are feeling in challenges around mental health, broadly speaking, now, a little bit removed from the worst of that time? What are you seeing? What is out there for young people, for older people, everywhere in between? Yeah. You just hit it. And hold it pretty tight. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Enjoyed we actually came last night, spent the night, and rather than make the early drive. So thrilled to be here and had a restful night in a fabulous hotel room. Don't you love that? A little getaway. what am I seeing? Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a continuation of what we saw before the pandemic, which is that many people have mental health issues and they feel strong stigma about revealing what's going on with them or with their family. If there may be any silver lining to the pandemic, we have been hearing a lot more about mental health, and it is my great hope that people will, in hearing other people talk about mental health, the stigma around mental health will lessen somewhat. I have said many times that we attend things like this, and we all agree and understand that we need to not feel stigma or shame about talking about mental health or suicidal thoughts or substance abuse or any of those related things. But then when it happens to us or in our own family, it feels a little different than when we were just talking about it in the more general sense. So I would say in summary, I'm not sure that we're seeing more incidents of mental health issues. I hope that we're seeing more people come forward and say, here's what's going on, and I think help is needed. Because it's important, and help is often needed, and we wouldn't hesitate to seek help for physical health. But when we remind ourselves that the brain is an organ in the body like all the other organs, and sometimes it might need care, it might need medicine, it might need therapy, it kind of makes more sense that it's okay to talk about, to reach out for help, and to find out what's out there that can help us.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think one of the silver linings, as you said, of the pandemic is teletherapy. So a lot of therapists are doing therapy virtually now, which is makes it a lot easier for people who have medical issues or can't get out of the house or agoraphobia, anxiety about leaving. So there has been, I think, about a 13% increase in young adults using therapy, partly because of the teletherapy factor. So that's been really a positive.
Thank you. And one of the things that I saw during the pandemic and it was a part of an initiative that Michelle and I both shared in that she'll speak to in a minute is there became conversation. We had already talked a lot about self-care or self-help. That was already common language. There became more of a focus, I think, on communal care, sort of how we can care for each other in community and better educate and raise awareness in the communal sense to care for it. So what I've asked them to focus on, each of them, for the bulk of our time is both sides of that coin, because both sides are important. And so Stephanie is going to start off and share some strategies that she uses in her practice or that she sees around self-care and self-compassion. And then I'll turn it over to Michelle to focus more on some of the communal strategies that she has been a big part of in Hampton Roads.
Okay. So, as we said, I'm Stephanie Johnson. I'm just going to read from this. And I'm happy to be here with you this morning. A little bit about myself. I'm married to Jeff, who's on the vestry here. We have 2 daughters, aged 13 and 10. Professionally, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have a private practice where I work with adults in individual therapy. The way I work is to help individuals to understand themselves and their patterns and thinking, patterns and relationships to a deeper degree, with the idea that when you understand yourself and the way things are in your life, it gets much easier to know what you need to do to feel better. So it's partly about helping people to access their inner wisdom. My specialties are working with adults with anxiety, working with a highly sensitive personality. And if you haven't heard of that, Elaine Aaron is a researcher who has a website on it, hsperson.com. It's people who are innately wired to think about things feel things deeper and think about things more thoroughly. They just sort of process life in a more thorough manner, which is a wonderful thing, but can be difficult in some ways. Helping people who are experiencing chronic medical issues, and I got into that work after my husband was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and working with adults with high-functioning autism. And there's a paradigm shift in the way that autism is understood, by the way. The idea that everyone with autism looks like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory is outdated. Girls and women in particular are very good at masking, which is acting like everyone else or like neurotypical people without even realizing they're doing this, making it practically invisible. And it's really helpful when they can understand what's going on in their family. So autism is a passion of mine, and I could go on about that. But today we're talking about self-compassion, which is also a really great topic. And I chose self-compassion because I think it's one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves in terms of self-care. All the activities that you can do self-care-wise are not going to be nearly as meaningful if you don't have the relationship with yourself, a relationship with yourself of kindness and care. So self-compassion is the new self-esteem, and this is a good change. Self-esteem is a judgment of worthiness based on your abilities and accomplishments, but self-compassion is a way of relating to yourself. It's unconditional caring for yourself, which is more spiritual and loving and not dependent on any external factors in our lives. Self-compassion is also a significant protective factor against anxiety and depression. So we all have an inner critic that tells us what we're doing wrong or what we're not doing good enough, and an inner comforter that tells us that we are doing the best we can, which we are, and that we are still loved no matter what. So to be more self-compassionate and to access this inner comforter, we need to do 3 things. One is awareness. We need to be more aware of the messages we send to ourselves without even realizing it. So we need to pay attention to what we say to ourselves when things are not going well. When we make a mistake, what is our reaction? What do we say to ourselves? What tone is it in? Is it a familiar voice from our past? Try to get a clear sense of what this voice is. The second is to reframe this voice to be more understanding and more supportive, not focused on what we're doing or how well we're doing it, but on our connection with ourselves and the nurturing that we need. So the understanding could be realizing that we were tired and stressed about an ill parent, and this is why we were short with a coworker, for example. Then third, we offer ourselves comfort by validating our feelings, even the tired and stressed feelings that led to whatever we did, and reassuring ourselves that we are still okay and have worth. You'll notice that the worth in this way of thinking, again, is not based on accomplishment or ability, but on our intrinsic worth as living beings. I'm going to talk about this book, Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff, which I think is great. And she talks about our worth from various spiritual perspectives, including Buddhism and Christianity. And for us, we have worth because God made us. So I'm going to give an example from her book of something that she had to work on having more self-compassion for herself for, because I think it shows that this isn't just about having compassion for ourselves for having a certain tone with a coworker, for example. It goes much deeper than this. And she talks about this with regard to the affair that she had in her marriage. So the author, Kristen, had descended into depression with self-criticism and feeling cut off even from herself after her affair. Then she started studying Buddhism and learned about self-compassion. She says, I started to judge myself a little less, to have compassion for my early childhood wounds. And I'll stop the quote there to say this is a part of the understanding piece that I mentioned before, that it's really important to understand why we're doing what we're doing and where things come from, that we may not even be aware of. And then she says, and to accept the limitations that led to my unfaithfulness. I wish I had been mature enough to realize that my marriage wasn't working and been able to choose a more honorable way of making a change. I wish I'd been wise enough to see certain things, but I wasn't able to do so at the time. I failed to live up to my ideals, and that was a very human thing to do. I also believed that if I forgave myself, it would just amount to letting myself off the hook. But to my surprise, I found that when I started to accept myself with more kindness and compassion, I could actually be more honest about the ways in which I had harmed others. It gave me an ability to see myself clearly and learn from the mistakes I made. By giving myself kindness and understanding, I could start to heal. This new place of inner warmth, peace, and emotional stability not only brought me great happiness, it allowed me to give more in my relationships with others. And then later in the book, she describes this as the angel of self-compassion that sits on her shoulder. And I love that image. So self-compassion is absolutely a form of self-care. Other types of self-care, there's a common theme that is working on being more present and more mindful of the positive. There is a saying that negative things stick to us like Velcro and positive things like Teflon. So the idea of self-care is to help ourselves get more mindful of the positive and being present in the moment. One example is the beauty walk, where you take a 20-minute walk, but you intentionally try to be present in the moment and to take in the beauty you see around you. So for example, you might pay attention to the feel of your shoes on the gravel. You see the leaves moving in the breeze. You observe what a delightful shade of green they are. You think about the scents in the air, the smell of the grass, the sound of the birds. This raises oxytocin, which is the hormone that brings us peace. Another example is a gratitude journal. Journaling is great for some and doesn't work as well for others, and that's okay. But if it works for you, you can write down 3 things you're grateful for every day. This could be small things like the coffee I got at Starbucks was just the right temperature, or you could focus on just one thing but really think about it. For me, the temperature outside makes a big difference in that it really helps my mood when it's warm. So I might spend some time thinking about things starting to grow and how much I love to sit outside and feel the warm breezes. So you could write about that too. Another way we can care for ourselves is self-appreciation. And I love how Kristen Neff describes this as not comparative in any way. To appreciate ourselves, we don't have to think that we are better than others, but we recognize that all people have goodness in them. She says, appreciation for our good qualities is really an expression of gratitude for all that has shaped us. Self-appreciation humbly honors all of creation. For any self-care activities to be optimally helpful, the most important ingredient is that you're connected to yourself, aware of your thoughts and feelings, respectfully trying to understand them, and to be compassionate toward yourself. One last thing that I find is really helpful in terms of self-care is humor. Watching shows. I think John mentioned Ted Lasso at some point. I also like The Unbeatable Kimmy Schmidt. Finding something like that I find goes a long way. So I could talk about all of this for a long time, and I'm happy to answer any questions later, but I know we're really lucky to have Michelle here. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. And Michelle, it's sort of the other side of the coin. I'd love for you to share some of the work and mission of the Sarah Michelle Peterson Foundation and how that is a means of engaging in communal care. And then maybe together we can say a word about talk about it Norfolk and Mentally Healthy Coalition as well. So.
Okay, I'm glad to do that. First, about the Sarah Michelle Peterson Foundation. It's quite obvious when you know that my name is Michelle Peterson that there is a strong connection between myself and the foundation. Our family, which is my husband, myself, and our 4 children, lost Sarah, our third of 4 children, to depression, anxiety, and suicide in 2014. She was a 9th grader, in high school, at Morey High School in Norfolk. And in the wake of her death, we really started thinking about how in our community and in all communities, there wasn't a lot of talk about mental health. People didn't necessarily, even if they were aware of Sarah's issues and perhaps other kids like her, they weren't talking about it, and they didn't know how to help. All of us are compassionate people who want to help others, but sometimes we just don't. And why is that? Usually because we're afraid. Our fear stops us from reaching out with compassion when really that is something that we are equipped to do. God has equipped us to do that, to show caring, to show compassion, to hear people's stories and lift one another up, right? And we know this in our hearts and in our minds. So, in the wake of Sarah's death by suicide, we decided that we could do something more than perhaps raise money for one of the national foundations that addressed youth mental health or suicide. And honestly, back then, 9 years ago, there wasn't as much of that as there is now. We decided to start a foundation right where we were, where people could learn how to help one another, where people could learn more about youth mental health in particular. And so, not exactly knowing what we were doing, we started the foundation together with some wonderful friends who became our first board of directors, because we did start a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. And we began with one program to educate youth about mental health. And it relied very strongly on the idea about not feeling embarrassment or shame about what was going on. Because after all, young people need to reveal their struggles to adults who can offer the actual help. You know, your friends, when you're 15, can know what's going on, be a listener, talk nice to you, and try to help. But someone's going to have to tell the adults to really get help. So we began with one program. We probably have about 7 now, 9 years later, because we quickly realized, gee, this wasn't a youth mental health problem. It spanned the lifespan, right? Mental health issues, struggling with mental health, not knowing how to help one another, and so forth, probably is starting in elementary school. Well, we know it is. I shouldn't say probably. It's starting in elementary school for some people, and spans the lifespan all the way to through all ages and into our senior ages, where people can also become depressed, anxious, have concerns that could lead them to think of taking their lives. So the Sarah Peterson Foundation focuses really on suicidal ideation and how to help people. And programs that we offer, both passive programs like having a table where you can pick up information, which we take our table all over Hampton Roads mostly, and then a little bit out when we get special requests. We do work across the state. As you might guess, our state suicide prevention coordinator is located here in Richmond, our capital. And he's a wonderful man named Justin Wallace, and I work with him quite regularly. He gathers together all of the suicide prevention nonprofits and the Virginia Department of Health and other folks like that regularly. But back to the Sarah Peterson Foundation. So we added adult programming. I mentioned passive programs where you just sort of pick up what you need. What we really, really need is to teach people how to help one another, as John called it, community care. The person who notices that you might be thinking about suicide is going to be someone who spends time with you. And we all know that we don't spend a lot of time with our doctors, and unless we have a relationship with a mental health professional, such as Stephanie and other types of professionals she talked about, we're not spending a lot of time with those types of people who we might have thought would help us if we needed that kind of help. Really, we're going to notice people who might need mental health care. Let me just ask a quick question. Give me your little show of hands. Who knows CPR? Wow, great. So if I or one of you suffers a cardiac event today, we're going to have a lot of first responders. We're going to have somebody going, I think she might be having a heart attack. And somebody going, I'll call 911. I'm doing that right now. We've got 4 people whipping out their phones, right? And then we're going to have, if chest compressions or rescue breathing is needed, even if maybe you haven't updated your card or you haven't been to class lately, people are going to give it a try, right? And we are very likely, if the person suffering the cardiac event is me, I am very likely to get to one of the nearby hospitals and get appropriate care really quickly. Early intervention matters, right? In that case, in learning to read, all the things. Early intervention matters. It matters in mental health too. The sooner that we get someone who's not okay with their mental health to care, the better off they're going to be. The quicker someone's going to start helping them with real care. So I'm going to tell you about a program called QPR. Rhymes with CPR to help you remember it, right? It's Question, Persuade, Refer, and it's a program for people 16 and older to learn the signs that someone's mental health is not okay, to learn to be a first responder and feel confident about what to say and what to do, and to know how and where to take them to get the real help that they need. Doesn't that sound a little bit like CPR? We're not becoming heart doctors when we learn CPR, right? We're becoming people who notice the signs, do a couple skills that we know, and send them to the care they need. We are a bridge to the real help. Same thing can happen with mental health. I mentioned QPR because there's that nice little parallel between CPR. But there are lots of other ways, and there are other specific programs like QPR that are available in a community that can help you recognize signs that someone's mental health is not okay. The signs are the same sometimes, whether we're talking about a youth, a grandchild, a child, a youth that you know, a neighbor kid, whoever they are, or we're talking about someone of working age, someone of college age, someone who's a senior. We can recognize signs of depression. We can recognize when that depression might be turning to hopelessness. And then we can gain confidence in what to say so that our own fear doesn't stop us from intervening and offering to be that bridge to help. We can learn how to keep people safe and take them or direct them to mental health care. Mental health care can look numerous different ways, and I'm not going to talk about that because we don't actually offer mental health care, and I'm going to stay in my lane of prevention, which is what the Sarah Peterson Foundation does. I want to tell you about our newest prevention initiative that we are working on, and this is really taking place in Hampton Roads, but it could be replicated here or anywhere else. We're doing a project called Project 300K, or 300,000. Research shows that when between 15 and 20% of a community or a population of an area understands and knows how to intervene in a public health issue, the incidence of that issue declines. So, for example, if a whole lot of people know CPR, then you're much less likely to die on the street of a cardiac event in that town, in that city. So, if 15 to 20% of people in the Hampton Roads area, which is just under 300,000 people, know how to intervene and take the steps that I've described and help someone with community care through a mental health issue in which they might have suicide as part of their thinking, then the incidence of suicide will go down. So our very ambitious goal with partners, because we're not doing this alone, there are others that teach the classes I've talked about and that obviously are involved in community care, including churches. But that direct instruction, not the passive instruction where you pick up a flyer, but the direct instruction where you maybe spend an hour learning some of the things that I've talked about that would be taught by certified instructors, such as we have, if we can get to that percentage, that 15 to 20%, which in our case is 300,000, it would be about 200,000 in the greater Richmond area. That would be about 15 to 20% of your population. That's the tipping point at which then the suicide rate goes down, which is our goal. So I think I've thrown a little folksy stuff in there and a little statistics for people who, think that way or think the other way. But those are some initiatives that are going on with the Sarah Peterson Foundation and with partners that we've worked with. I mention partners because nobody walks alone, right? Nobody works alone. The best things don't happen when somebody has an idea and they try to do it all by themselves, especially if it's an ambitious idea like that. I know John and I are going to continue our conversation with some ways, large and small. I don't know if you'll toot your own horn enough, so I'm going to say that while John was the pastor of St. Andrew's Church in Norfolk, he started the Mentally Healthy Norfolk Coalition, which I hope he will tell you more about. I was proud to be among the founding members of that with him and many other people. And we had a lot of community care initiatives. And even now that John has moved on and come here, it's still going very strong. So I'll be happy to talk more about that too when you want me to, if you want me to.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just say 2 minutes on some of those initiatives. About 5-6 years ago, we started this coalition to bring together a number of different providers and partners in the nonprofit sector, and healthcare sector, churches and city leaders and so forth. And one of the first things we did, which I thought was not my idea, but I thought it was so creative, and it gets to what Michelle was talking about, is we organized a series of trainings for people in the community to have this kind of sort of mental health first aid or QPR kind of those types of trainings. But here are the people we targeted, and see if you would have thought of some of these. We targeted hairstylists and barbers and bartenders and clergy and probably a few others I'm forgetting. But the people who are the most likely people to hear the stories. Michelle said you go to the doctor a couple times a year maybe. But
5 minutes.
Right, for a few minutes. But those are the people really who are on the front lines in terms of hearing about people's pain and hearing when they're in crisis. So we did all these trainings with those folks in Hampton Roads, which was really impactful, I think. And it evolved into a focus. We said, what would it look like if we tried to do that in as many of the businesses and organizations and storefronts as we could in Hampton Roads? And so that was kind of the next evolution of the initiative. And then COVID kind of struck that down, and now it's rising back up. But what would it look like if any bank you went into, or any clothing boutique, or any religious congregation or school, if you went in there and you had the confidence that there were people on that staff who had even 1 or 2 people who had some level of training, orientation like Michelle described, and had some, like a sticker or a poster or some flyers or materials that let you know that was a place where if you were in trouble you could share your pain and share your struggle, and that somebody would be able to have a resource to share with you or help you know where to go to get help. So that was the next phase of that. And I share that you all are in those places here. And you don't need a coalition or an initiative to be thinking about what would it look like if your employees or your peers or your colleagues had a greater awareness and greater education in the ways that Michelle described. So those were a few pieces of that work that I wanted to share as well. Do you have any last?
If I could add to that too. I think an important piece of that is the reach. What you're saying about, we're assembled here today in our one place that we have in common. I need to not talk with my hands when I have a microphone, right? Our one place that we have in common. We're here on Sunday mornings. But the rest of the week, we're out in the world, so to speak, out in the community. And I think that just as you're a representative of where you work, and perhaps sometimes you're a representative of this place, it comes up and you go, oh yeah, I go to St. Stephen's, and you're able to give a little information and be an ambassador, being able to help people in the mental health space is something that we can all do in our community, and we don't have to leave it to the professionals. What would happen if we were all doing that in our community? To the professionals, they would be able to concentrate on the people who truly needed those skills, right? Because some people only need a caring conversation and a few resources. And John talked about the beginning of the Mentally Healthy Norfolk Coalition and what we did at first. Another piece of that was that that coalition created a little resource guide, one of those little things that folds all up, and it had resources for all kinds of things. Because in your caring conversation with somebody, where you're on the lookout for suicidal issues that you might want to go, ooh, we need to get you to that kind of help right away, maybe that's not really what they need. Maybe they need a referral for a domestic violence place. Maybe they need to know where AA meets or NA. Maybe they need something else. So having resources available all over the place. John mentioned, businesses all over. We partnered with the local business association. We partnered with the Chrysler Museum, which you might have heard of. Fabulous works of art there. But we were able to plan with them. It got cut short by COVID, but planning to be having an event together where we would be talking about mental health. And I think that one in particular, we also were talking about gun violence. But all those things to say that a lot of times mental health and the helpful things get pushed into health fairs and places like that. And if you don't go to the health fair, then you don't know about the resources, right? And maybe you're not really going to spend Saturday morning going to that kind of thing. Maybe you want to go to the farmer's market. And what if we had that information and people available to help at the farmer's market? Or maybe you want to go to the museum. You have a fabulous art museum here that I've been to several times. What about a partnership with them? What about stores? What about routine places? So all of that to say, having people in the community and places in the community where it's just okay and acceptable to talk about mental health is so, so important. And the secondary thing is having the confidence, because, again, we're all really caring people, but it can be scary. So learning a little bit to give you confidence can make a world of difference in all of that.
Thank you. So normally we would open this time up for questions, and my hope, I'm putting you two on the spot, but if you're willing to stick around for a few minutes, maybe some folks after I have to leave to get dressed. But for the rest of our time, what I want to do is invite our kind of some of our resource folks to step out into the line of sight here, and I'm going to steal Michelle's microphone to go get. And what I'd like for them to do is just, you can come out to the opening here. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. You knew it was coming, though. Yeah. Well, yeah, just come right over here. So these folks, as I said, all represent different offerings that we have week to week here at St. Stephen's. So just each of you give 20 or 30 seconds on who you're representing, what group you're representing, and they have materials here for you all to take and visit, and some of them may be able to be here for coffee hour afterwards also, and if not, just leave your stuff and folks can come and see that afterwards. So turn it over, yeah.
Hi, I'm Robin Raver. I teach a couple yoga classes a week here up in room 201. The Tuesday class is from 4:30 to 5:45, and it's a little more traditional. For those of you that know yoga, it's alignment-oriented, Iyengarish. And I'm taking the month of May off, but when we join our Thursday morning classes from 9:30 to 10:30, it's going to be aging gracefully, which means it's going to be a much more gentle class that's going to focus on simple stretches and a little bit of mobility so that your day-to-day life is a little easier.
Hello, I'm Jim Johnson. John, thank you for inviting me, and I represent someone from AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. The support that St. Stephen's has given Alcoholics Anonymous by giving us a place to meet is unparalleled in this area. Every week we have in the hundreds of numbers of folks who come to meetings downstairs and throughout the church. AA has been around since the 1930s. The model is the 12-step program. Now there are 6 or 7 or 8 different 12-step meetings focusing on different areas, problem areas of people's lives. I bet you that there's not one person in this room whose life has not been touched by a family member or a friend with an alcohol problem. NA is an outgrowth of AA. Now, and I'll finish with this, at St. Stephen's, there are meetings every day except Saturday in the evenings that run the gamut from general AA meetings to young people's meetings to women's meetings and so on throughout. Overeaters Anonymous, etc., and many others. But the opportunity to be here, by listing some of the things that were said earlier, in terms of community, helping each other, that kind of thing, that is the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. We operate under the principle of attraction, not promotion. I'm going to break that rule just a tiny bit. We'll be here after this is over to answer any questions if anyone should have any. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Southwell. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I work with the group VIP Care, the Virginia Institute of Pastoral Counseling, providing pastoral care, spiritually integrated psychotherapy. VIP Care has a long-standing history being graciously offered office space here at St. Stephen's, so I am here 2 mornings a week, working with a variety of different folks, variety of different issues. And I'm trying to think if I'll be here. If I can offer any information, be happy to do that. Our organization also offers pre-marriage, marital counseling, family therapy, and we welcome community members into the church and into our organization. So,
hi, I'm Millie Kane, and Patty Carpenter and I are here representing the contemplative prayer meeting that meets Mondays and Fridays at from 9:30 to 10:30. And to encapsulate what it is, we come together to meet this moment and sit in whatever's arising together, and with the understanding that just sitting here and not getting up and running out of the room or whatever it is we're experiencing, we can, as we know, whenever 2 or more are gathered, and there is profound power, and we experience that. So anybody's welcome. You don't have to have any experience with meditating or anything like that.
Hi, my name is Yvette Davis, and I was just reading for you earlier. I am also a yoga teacher. I started a 9 a.m. Class on Saturdays during the farmers market, and I think it's coming back. So I have cards over here and a little flyer. My yoga practice tends to be really more, not that you're not fun, but a lot of people have told me I add a lot of humor, and we like practicing outside. So my 9 a.m. class will be starting up again in May during the farmers market at 9 o'clock in the morning. But one of my main focus is private yoga sessions. And this enables you and I to kind of build this base and this rapport that I can help you with your own issues, body, mind, spirit, and we can kind of walk the walk together. And I do have a little bit of yoga knowledge, and I'm happy to impart that. So I have some cards over here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anna Jones. I'm on staff here, and I manage our Saturday morning farmers market. And the market is a great place to find fresh produce and ethically raised meat and other ways to take care of your health, which is great for mental health too, and also some sugary treats, and also to make relationships with the people who grow your food and with other customers as well. There are lots of friendships that happen at the market, and we're open every Saturday, rain or shine.
Thank you. I'm Elizabeth Spell. I'm a participant in a Thursday evening yoga class. I do not teach that class. Hattie is our instructor, and she's been doing this for a long time. I have information to share with you if you want it come by after this or after coffee hour. But I will say that almost without fail, when I leave my class, I feel calm but energized. And I always feel so much better about myself. It's amazing. Anyway, we are a small group and enjoy the benefits of being a community. So that's no small thing either.
Thank you all. So I'm gonna thanks to all of you. I'm gonna give you all a chance to visit either over there, get some materials, or to visit up here.
Can I mention them?
Yeah.
I talked so much about, I have a nice loud voice. I talked so much about not being afraid to step into a caring conversation. I also brought materials, and there are a number of things over there, and I know we're short on time, but if you are thinking, gosh, I might want to talk to someone, what can I get that's passive right now today? What can I pick up? It's a bookmark, and it has conversation starters on it. And also, I'm not going to spend time talking about it, but there is a new crisis number. 911's for the body, 988 is for the mind, and you can talk to a counselor for free, and there are magnets.
Super. Did you all know that? Did you know about 9?
Okay, topic for another forum.
Yeah, right. So 988 is a new crisis number for mental health, right? The last thing I had is St. Paul's downtown has a terrific resource. It's called Pastoral Care Resources, and they gave us permission to use it. And it lists out all kinds of local to Richmond area hotlines and organizations to help in all the broadest umbrella of mental health care. We made maybe 30 or 40 copies of this that are sitting on one of the tables over there as well.